Hey, welcome to Wine Talks with Paul Kay, and we are in an away game today, actually in the heart of the Napa Valley. We came up to check on the fires and see the devastation. It's really quite remarkable, actually, that so much was saved. And we are here at Acumen in downtown Napa, which is a beautiful tasting room. And we're here with winemaker Phillip Titus, and he's in the middle of telling me about how they got here in 1968. And by the way, welcome to the show, Phillip. It's great to have you here. Do you go by Phil or Phillip?
Phillip.
Phillip, okay.
My youngest brother calls me Phil.
So. Okay, so when I'm not your youngest brother, so I am a younger brother, but that's okay. So you're telling me that your parents came here in the 60s and they were looking for ag land, because what was going on in the 60s here?
Well, not a lot, and that was not lost on my brothers. I've got three brothers, and even, not that Sonoma was the big town, but when we came to, they were kind of focused on the St. Helena area, and we could see that it was definitely a step down from Sonoma to go to St. Helena.
Really?
Because there was like nothing going on in St. Helena. It was a tiny little town, and really, then we would, as kids, we'd be in the back seat or wherever, and my parents were meeting with realtors, and everything was for sale here. There was not a lot of value on the land, because the wine boom that really started in the 70s, it just hadn't started yet. It was just about to, but people really didn't know that. And so, my parents weren't like speculating on that. They just wanted vineyards. And
but it was agriculturally vineyards, so it wasn't plums or peaches or almonds.
There were still the remnants of the prunes and walnuts. Still, there was much more then than there is now. And in fact, one of the properties that they bought was a prune orchard, and on Eller's Lane in St. Helena. So
that's
there was still the old Napa Valley was still there in the 60s. So
well, it's interesting because we were talking about Joanne Dupuis, the young lady at the time who's now 93 but very articulate, talking about the Judgment of Paris and how she took Stephen Spurrier around, and she said in the 40s, they came here in 49, and I'm going to guess she started doing this in the 70s, but she said like Yountville was just a bar town. It was for veterans to go have a drink.
It was a bunch of bars that the veterans would take the bus into town.
And that's hilarious.
Go to the bars. And there was, I don't, even as growing up here, there was no reason to go to Yountville.
No, except for a drink.
Napa, maybe St. Helena, go out to dinner in St. Helena, but Yountville there was vintage 1870 there. So if you had to buy like a gift for Mother's Day or something that, you go look around.
That's so interesting because when if you read the book from George Tabor on the Judgment of Paris, and Andrew Chelachev came here, and he ends up in St. Helena, doesn't even know where he's going to sleep, and there's just a sleepy little town with a light burning in some hotel, and he gets a room that night. And so and I want the listeners to kind of know, Napa's a pretty commercial place now, and you come here to do things, and Yountville is sort of this little enclave of really fancy things to do, and it wasn't always like that. And that's
until actually quite recently, the real boom in Yountville started in the 90s.
So relatively young, really.
By the 80s, there were a few restaurants, and I'm not sure exactly what year the French Laundry started. That would be good to know. But it just really it was only in the 90s that what we think of Yountville even got started. There was the Yountville Diner, and
that's
that, and people would go to breakfast there, but that was about it, and maybe lunch. And but Napa has changed a lot, and downtown Napa has changed really in the last 20 years, and more like in the last 10 or 15 years. It's quite amazing what's happened to downtown.
We were here not just after the earthquake, but enough after the earthquake where there were still many, many closed buildings. It was really tragic to see. I think people also don't understand that Napa's a pretty big town. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of restaurants. There's a lot of things to do. This is a beautiful tasting room that you guys have built to entertain the people, and we can see the crowd coming in as we're talking.
Really busy down here today. All you need is a little sunshine and no smoke, and everybody comes out. So you grew
up on the Sonoma side, or you grew up on the Napa side?
I grew up in the town of Sonoma, and so my parents stayed in Sonoma, even though they owned the land, and they eventually purchased 50 acres in St. Helena, and now we have the Titus winery on that property. My brother and I started the wine business. My parents bought the vineyard. My brother and I started the wine business, and then we custom crushed for, gosh, about 25 years, and then we built our winery on Silverado Trail in 2015. Beautiful winery, but we've taken our time. We've done it. We financed the whole thing ourselves. We built the business. And it's
That's
a
hard work.
multi-generational thing. It takes a long time to
Well,
make
it's funny you said that, because I have that as part of our conversation here, and coming to Napa Valley today, it's very hard to, without a huge bankroll, to buy land or plant, which, according to Bo Barrett, it takes 13 years once you plant, if you start from scratch, to start seeing a profit from that vineyard or something like that.
No, because when you think about it, the first grapes that come off the vineyard aren't great,
Right.
when the young vines, and then they get better, and then maybe around year 7 or 8 they're really good, and then you make the wine, and it takes like 2 or 3 years to get it out to market. So you're solidly into 10 years before you're selling.
Before you see anything, right?
Yeah.
So that was an interesting point, and Mike Salacci at Opus said this to me, and I didn't know until I read it again, which was, and we believe this, and I think this is probably true. Yes, it takes 4 or 5 leaves to get the crop of grapes that you think you can use for wine, but turns out that the Stag's Leap Cabernet that was made by Warren Winiarski was the first leaf, or the first crop that they could harvest.
Ironically, one
funny?
of the most famous wines from California, from Napa Valley, is the '69 Chapelae Cabernet.
Yes.
Legendary wine, and probably more 100-point scores than any other wine from Napa Valley. And it was made from 5-year-old
That's something.
vines. And so, and I know, and that always looms in my memory that, well, when we say these aren't ready, that there are times when they're great, but I can't really speak to that because I wasn't there.
Well, so do you think this is we'll get into the winemaking side, and I want to hear how you landed in this career anyway, even though you were born here. It doesn't mean you have to do this, but I tell the story all the time, and I had a young woman in here from the Caucasus in Armenia, and she had Michel Roland, consulting in her vineyard. And, Armenians have been making wine for like 6,000 years. But he tells her, after he tastes the first leaf and the grapes, he says, yes, I think it'll work. Now we got to wait 100 years. And I'm wondering if, the idea that Warren Winiarski stumbled across that first vintage and was able to make wine out of it just was, I'm not going to say luck, but, they did all the right things. But it just so happens that they were able to coax out of the grapes the right character to do what it did. And they just, with all the moving parts, it just landed right.
Yeah,
and it seems to me that kind of.
I think it's very much the same as the '69 Chapelae. Very, very difficult to reproduce. It happened, and and actually I know from Chapelae, since I know the wines better. The 70 was fantastic, but then there were a few years that, then 71 was okay, 72, it rained a lot, 73 was not a great year. Then it took till 74 to have another great year.
Is that the gambler in you guys when you try?
Yeah,
see if we can hit that one.
Yeah, there's a term they say, the San Giacomos always say, they call it farming because gambling was already taken.
That's right.
And it's a gamble. It is a bigger gamble than we ever realized.
Well, then let me ask you this: how did you become a gambler?
It must have been in my blood because my father wanted to farm, and so with 3 brothers, everybody else, it's like I look around, they're all gone. They've all taken off in other directions, and I liked it enough to stay around and worked with my father. And so at 18, I went to UC Davis, and I was in the enology department at UC Davis studying winemaking. And you really have to wonder, why would an 18-year-old want to make wine?
Yeah, that's a really good question.
It really is, and I think about that more and more. But there's something so romantic about wine that even an 18-year-old gets it. Even though, and I had a lot of good wine. My father collected all the best from Napa and the best from Bordeaux. And not so much first growths, but more like the second and third growths, and very good wines. And he aged them in a cellar. So I was very familiar with wine. I can't say I sought it out, but when I got to college, I drank wine. I wasn't drinking beer. I was drinking wine.
Okay, that's kind of bizarre.
Yeah,
That's
that's the way I was.
bizarre.
Yeah, so it seemed to be kind of destined. And then I really questioned it and maybe tried a few other things, but always in agriculture, but came back to wine. And I was thinking more agriculture, but there was something. I think it was over a Christmas break that I worked for a winery on Lodi Lane, just washing barrels. And it was just, my mother said, they need help back there. Why don't you go ask them if you can get a job over the break? And I went back there, and there's just, it's hard work, it's dirty, but there's something that just, it's so captivating. You smell the cellar. God only knows what it smelled like, but it's the smell of the cellar, the wood, washing the barrels, the smell of the wine. And you just can't imagine after that, for me, that I was going to do anything else but make wine.
I deliberately have guys in my warehouse break a bottle once in a while just so it smells like that.
You'll linger around for it. Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So that's a really good point. 18-year-old getting a wine. I've been doing this 30 years. I've been tasting every Tuesday for 30 years, somewhere probably north of 100,000 wines. And I don't think it really the wow moment is rather contemporary for me, maybe 10 years ago, when I realized there's something really special about what we're doing here. And maybe you can articulate it, and I haven't got an articulate answer yet, so I'm not sure I have all high hopes, but the grape does that. And you don't get that with a pineapple, you don't get it with onions, you don't get it with radishes, you don't get it with bananas. But for some reason, in the course of history, the grape has created this mystique and this, I don't know, coaxing from the vineyard and the terroir and the soil and the place and the time that we get, that we're trying to understand, and we probably never will. But
grapes grow very often. Grapes grow in these really beautiful places.
And that's a really good point.
Kind of Mediterranean climate.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And rocky soils. I mean, you can have loamy, rich soils, but very often it's hillsides, rocky soils, gravelly bench lands, and things like that. When you drive through Rutherford and the mountains around it. It's quite spectacular.
That's true. That's a really good point.
I think if I grew up in Lodi or Bakersfield, I may not have had the same draw.
Yeah.
I don't know, but it's in a way, it could have been just as enticing. But grapes grow in such beautiful areas, and you quickly, even without drinking a lot, you become sort of addicted to the whole lifestyle,
right.
The food and wine. And I've never been a big drinker or a big eater, but it's always good food with wine.
Let's talk about that. So the Sonoma side of things. We were just actually at the Jack London Park, State Park today, walking around the Kenwood Vineyards, and a really fascinating place. I'd not been there before all the years we've come up here. But it was been put to me by a French winemaker that, and I sort of was jealous of the idea that the Bordelais have their foods, and the Burgundies have their food, and the Tuscans have their food, and the Piemontes have their foods, and their wines go with it. And I believe, as you probably do too, that wine and food grows together, and it becomes sort of one, and particularly in Europe, one and the same. But in America, we don't have that. We don't have indigenous grapes. In fact, we drove by Hazarathi, and he brought Zinfandel to America, and we all thought that was indigenous grape, but it wasn't. Maybe it's Croatian, but the French winemaker said to me, he says, but that's what the new world is about. America's the new world, and you get to do new things, and you get to create what you guys living in this environment have done. A Sonoma-based food palette, a Napa-based food palette, and you get to experiment, and you're not bound, what he said, you're not bound by the traditions of the Bordelais or bound by the tradition of the Burgundy.
They do have a lot of rules.
Yeah, there are a lot of rules, and the foods, you don't venture out. So tell me about the evolution of Sonoma, because there's such different places now.
Sonoma and Napa.
Still rural. You go to the square, and there's people walking around. There's lots of restaurants. It's I hate to say it, it's kind of more fun.
Oh, in Sonoma?
Yeah.
Sonoma's a wonderful place, and that is, all my years at Chapelae. We've evolved as a business, and we've start out with our estate. I mean, you're talking about Acumen, but it's been this evolution at Chapelae that we always made Chardonnay, and then we realized growing Chardonnay on Pritchard Hill was not the best place to grow Chardonnay, so we started moving south, got into the town of Napa, around Napa, and then Carneros, and Napa Carneros, and then we follow it to the Sonoma Carneros, because that's where we kept finding the better and better Chardonnay. And then once you're in Chardonnay territory, then there's Pinot Noir, and you just can't be there and not make Pinot Noir.
Of course not.
So you start experimenting with Pinot Noir, and then you go like, well, I want my Chardonnay from Carneros, but I want my Pinot Noir from Russian River.
Yes, that's right.
And then you start seeing Sonoma is such a diverse place.
It is.
You can grow Cabernet, you can grow Zinfandel in the Dry Creek, you can grow Cabernet on the Mayacamas Range or Sonoma Mountain. Chardonnay grows, in many different locations. And then, to me, one of the world's greatest places to grow Pinot Noir is the Russian River, and especially the Green Valley of Russian River. So I've been able to explore all of those, and Chapelae has a pretty robust Sonoma County program. And
is that where you ended up at Chapelae after you went to school?
Chapelae was, I got out of Davis in 1981. And I picked up the St. Helena Star, and they were advertising for
the St. Helena Star.
That's the St. Helena Star, not a big paper. It comes out once a week.
Ain't Craigslist,
but and I picked it up, and they were advertising for an assistant winemaker. And I must say, I don't think I was cocky so much, but I thought, well, I'll do that. So I just went up there and talked to Tony Soder, and it was almost more like, when do I start? Because I've just finished Davis.
And so they're willing to take a kid right out of school, hasn't probably made in the lab, I guess you made some wine, or during the, for a report or something, but all of a sudden now you're making wine for Chapelae, which was, a going concern.
Yeah, I was assistant.
Well, but still,
Yeah, no, but I was running the cellar, and
yeah.
I learned from Kathy Corison, so that was my first job, and I was there for 4 years, gone for 5, and I've been back for 31.
Wow.
So my life has been spent there, and the great thing of the Chapelaes have been really wonderful about letting me experiment around. My brother and I started, actually my mother and father and I started the Titus business, and then funny, my dad liked growing grapes, but he didn't like selling wine. And so,
well, it's hard.
It's hard, and plus he wanted to give it away. He wanted it to be like 1965,
right.
But it was 1990, and so we had to make ends meet on it, and so he bowed out, and my brother and I bought out my parents. But so the Chapelaes were like, of course, you can work with your family, and I eventually kind of broadened out to some different wineries, and I've always done some consulting, and now it's a big part of what I do, and that's what brought me to Acumen. And I knew there was going to be a change at Acumen because I knew the winemaker was leaving, and I just ran into him at Premier Napa Valley, and I thought, well, I should say something to him, but I didn't have to. I said, well, who's going to take your place? And this is Henrik Paulsen, and he goes, well, how would you like to take my place? And it was like,
wow.
I was hoping something we could at least talk. I didn't expect him to offer me,
while you're having a glass of wine.
Well, just we're getting set up and tasting each other's wine at Premier Napa Valley. But I always thought it would be a great fit because, Chapelae on Pritchard Hill, and then the Acumen vineyards, the Edcora and the Atlas vineyard, are really, as the crow flies, like a mile from us, maybe a mile and a half.
Oh, so
they're on the same ridge.
Terroir, weather, subclimate.
It's something that I totally know. Yeah. It's in my veins, that kind of rocky eastern hills, and Cabernet or Bordeaux varieties. It just seemed like a good way to kind of flex that kind of winemaking muscle, that Cabernet, knowledge that you've got, and experiment with some different styles and vineyards. And in fact, Chapelae has been buying grapes from the Edcora vineyard since 2011. So we'd already been buying quite a few grapes from them. So it was kind of just a great fit.
If I said that a Chapelae, last names, family name, came to my office in 90, young girl.
Alexa.
Would that? Yeah, oh, that's who it was.
That was Alexa.
Yeah, she came to sell some Chapelae wines.
Right. She was in based in Southern California, still is. She lives down there with now, she's got 3 kids, and I think most of them are off to college now. But yeah, she got around to the Duke of Bourbon and all the old, the shops that were there at the time, and always sold Chapelae wine.
It's funny because I interviewed Bruce Nyers, the famed, he'd been here forever, and he was telling me on the podcast, he goes, when the way we did it, we'd load the station wagon, I'm not even sure it was legal, like 1975, and I would drive to L.A., and I would stop at your dad's store, and I would stop at Duke of Bourbon, I would stop at Wally's, and I would stop at 2 others, and I'd come home. That was the sales route. That's what we used to do.
Drop off like 2 cases in each place.
Off, right. So, but you said something really interesting, and I want to pursue that just for a second. In 1988, my dad called me up. I was selling software. I'd started a company with a couple other guys. We were just cruising along. And he says, I think I'm going to sell this. I had an offer for the Wine of the Month Club, the original idea. And he goes, do you want to check it out? And I said, sure. So we went down and I worked for 3 months, packed some wine. I go, this is pretty fun. I think I can do this. I think my career has taken me to a point where I can start, run my own thing. But then the negotiation for the sale came up. Now, my dad's from Cairo. And he's a merchant, he's an entrepreneur merchant, there's nothing, and nothing for free. So it was a very short negotiation. These are the terms, these are the price, so good luck, we're all counting on you. So when you said that you and your brother bought out your parents, was that a negotiation, or was it like just a sort of a handshake, or?
They didn't, the business, it was very early on, and there was not a lot of equity. I think we had sold like 2 vintages at the time, so we were very small, and so really what we had was more like debt than equity. Well, yeah. And so we just looked at what we started the business, and it carried it through, I think, most of the first 10 years or so on $170,000. And
really, wow,
nobody got paid ever. And
that's pretty amazing.
My brother and I still don't really pay each other. Yeah. We just the minimum, yes. And we pay all our employees.
Right.
And
that's what happens.
Yeah, and
we've been there.
Yeah, and it's just been one of those things that we did it. We didn't really know much about the wine business. So my brother is a marine biologist, and I'm a winemaker. We know grape growing, but the business part of it is really different. So we just paid my parents back for what they had put in. That we took.
But there was a conversation that occurred. Yeah. This is how we're going to handle it. This is what we've got. Does your dad regret that, or you wishes you was back in it now that you've sold some stuff?
No. I don't think he ever really. I don't think he really liked. I think he liked that idea of. Loading up the station wagon and stopping and say hi to a bunch of friends and selling them some wine.
Right.
But he didn't like trying to get distributors in Chicago and New York and Florida and Texas and
sales meetings and
my mother, who's Italian, was actually quite good at it, and she stayed on and worked with my brother and I, and especially when somebody owed us money and they were late.
Oh, that's what you need, an Italian woman.
Mom just jumped on it.
Sure. So now let me recap what we're doing. You're making wines for Acumen as the consulting winemaker, or
I call myself winemaker, because in the end there is nobody else. I have an assistant, but it's really me. So I just call myself winemaker.
And how many cases are they making?
Acumen now is about 5,000 cases.
Well, it's pretty good size then. It's getting up there.
Yeah. With all the different brands, and we're.
For as young as it is.
Yes, and they have not built a winery yet. They have a winery permit for the property up on Atlas Peak, but it's actually sort of a complicated story because land use in Napa Valley is the real
it's got very strict.
I look at the Napa Register every day to really see the land use issues going on because it's they got a permit. It was challenged by the neighbors, so the planning commission said yes. The planner said yes, you get this permit. It was all done perfectly, and then the neighbors came after them and said, well, we don't want a winery up here and up at the top of Soda Canyon Road. So they went to the supervisors, and the supervisors upheld the permit, and now the neighbors are suing the county. So this permit was issued probably 5 years ago, and
God, that is amazing
it's
to
still
me.
tied up in court. And so, and I'm sure they'll win, but I think the owners are probably a little bit like, really, is it this difficult to do things?
That is fascinating because I spent 8 years on the planning commission in the Sangre Valley at Arcadia, and I know exactly what happens behind the scenes with the staff, without the staff, with the council, and it would befuddle anybody, particularly somebody who's done this, that at a place like Napa, there would be challenges to that land use, to the use, and I'm sure they're going to condition it if they continue to win. Yes, you can have a tasting room, but it can only be, this is what happens, right? To satisfy somebody who's suing the county or the city, you make sacrifices to what the permit is going to allow. And I just can't imagine that this area would have that.
We already have a whole list of things you have to satisfy, that they've come up with a definition that's called a winery definition ordinance that tells you what you can and can't do to build a winery. So once you've satisfied all those things, then people still come back and challenge you on those things.
Absolutely phenomenal.
But it's not a bad thing to slow down the process a little bit, because we don't want to pave the place over.
Yeah.
But people do have, there's a lot of people that feel like we're overregulated, and I do think we have to preserve the valley.
That's the ABC too, right?
There's no question we have to preserve what we've got here. But I think that we've done a quite a good job. You can't have any commercial businesses in the valley. Once you get in outside of the city limits of any one of these towns, you can't have restaurants unless they were like the Rutherford Grill that was grandfathered
from back.
it was an old commercial site. So I think that the Acumen team has they've been challenged, but I think they'll prevail. It's just a matter of time, and it's just a matter of spending a lot of money on attorneys and engineers.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
It's funny. Probably getting off subject a little bit, but land use is I don't know if I'm conservative or liberal. And I was talking to my wife on the way up here, because you see some interesting architecture and homes. And I'm the guy that actually thinks that you can live in a geodesic dome, even though the rest of the houses near your neighborhood are chateau-esque or ranch houses. I don't know that a planning department or a planner who went to planning school and it passes through in time at a place like Napa or at anywhere, it doesn't matter, knows necessarily what's best for that in the community. I think the long-term view, like you're saying, where there's a preservation of the community and the agriculture and the lifestyle is more important than, for instance, maybe a few uses, or whether we're going to grandfather the Rutherford Grill in or not. I'm not sure that applies, but I have this sort of view of that. But I can see the point of Napa's changed so rapidly, and well, not rapidly, but since. Well, let me put it this way: the crowd I saw at Yountville. It's clear to me that people come here to get a break, to take time, to put on their nicest clothes. And
it's not just about wine.
Right. It's not just about it, it's about who sees you here. And you don't really get that when you go to Sonoma. We walk in the square and everybody's having a good time, and it's just a little more casual, and there's a little more rural, and there's a little more Sebastiani, playhouse kind of stuff going on, right? And I just started coming here a lot because to do this podcasting, and I wasn't aware of some of these changes that occurred because I hadn't been here for many years. I hadn't needed to come here. Now I want to come here. But as a kid, when you were here and you saw these changes happening, did you have those thoughts in your mind that you were watching some substantive change in your lifestyle is going to change, the way things happen are going to change? Did that?
I think when you're in your 20s, you don't really have much perspective. Like I remember, when I first started working, and there was a recession in 1982, and I was like, "What do you mean recession?
What does that mean?
I'm making $7 an hour. This does not affect me. I don't have a stock portfolio." So you really don't see it for what it is till you get a little older, and I think the prosperity that it has brought to this area is amazing, and really, the better we do, the more, the more money you can charge for the wine, the more money you can charge for the grapes, the more innovative you can be in winemaking. Like, I think when I look around, wine quality, as much as people sometimes look back and say, oh, the wines from the 70s were classics, I don't think so. You know, some were, most weren't. It's that wine has gotten so much better over, during my time in the wine industry, because I know all the equipment we used to use. I know the barrels we used to use, the techniques we used to use. Things are so much more sophisticated now, and wine quality is, like people talk about, like, well, you read the Wine Advocate and there's all these high scores. Well, that's only a small group of people, really. But I think those scores reflect the quality of Napa Valley wine. They're just, the quality has come up so high. The knowledge of grape growing and winemaking is through the roof compared to what it was when I first got into the business. And so I think the whole area has just prospered. But it's made, if you forget that it's, about all the tourism and things like that, it is at the end about wine.
It's about wine.
Wine quality is great.
It's about wine. I think it's important, and I think people need to understand is wine is farming. We're really farmers. It starts in the vineyard. We all understand that, and it's all about what coaxing out of the land into the grape that we want, and then understanding what that is. That's your job. What we get, and to make wine out of it. But you said something. You said something important that I just forgot. So
I'll probably say it again.
No, it happens all the time. But when we came up a few weeks ago, just before COVID, we were interviewed by the Napa Valley Register, and I thought it was going to be this glorious interview of Paul Callum Carrion, the Wine of the Month Club, the original Wine of the Month Club in 1972, but it wasn't. It was really, she was sort of asking us, since we're basically internet retailers and we've been doing it for 30 years, not the internet, but, how can wineries in the Napa Valley take advantage of the internet? And we're learning how to use chat buttons now. And I started thinking, well, that's pretty interesting, because if I'm a farmer and I'm making wine, I love making wine, and I do it because of the passion of it, but now I've got to do something like have a customer service agent sit in front of a monitor and wait for the chat to go off so I can answer some questions. That's a whole different model. It's a whole different model. And I think she was sort of suggesting, because the Napa wines have gotten expensive. The land's expensive, planting is expensive, harvesting is expensive. It costs a lot of money. Yeah. And so you're talking about wines that are $100. Maybe they're more.
And many that are less. And I think there's still a lot of wines that are less expensive from Napa, but they don't get the notoriety.
They don't.
You kind of forget about some of those.
That's right.
There's a lot of wines in the $40, $50, $60 range that are really, really good wines, but they're not, when people think about it, they think about the more expensive wines, but there's still a lot of value. And
do you think there's identity crisis that happening, or that I'm just gleaning from this conversation, my business is, I've got two totally opposing customers. I've got the $12.99 to $25 person looking for the best value they can find, and they're not totally worried about the story as long as they can drink it. And then I've got the people that are paying $40 to $100. I can't keep Camus in stock, for instance, that kind of branding. So I have to wrestle with both types of mentalities. And I agree with you. There's totally great wines, and there's a million reasons why that occurs, right? Good wine that can't be marketed properly.
No, there's that.
Right.
Yeah.
You see that all the time.
Yeah.
So, do you think, though, that Napa is going through some kind of identity crisis? And I'm only saying this because of this. The consumer is seeing Groupon, 15 wines for $45, and this is true. One of my competitors, it drives me nuts, and I know the guy too, and I'll tell him when I see him next. He takes a case of Gaia or a case of First Growths, and he puts it in a picture, and he calls himself the Overstock King or whatever, and then you click on it, and you're getting this €1 per liter junk. But he makes it look like it's the overstock of the First Growths that you're going to end up getting in this surprise.
A great deal on Chateau Latour.
So I wonder from when you conversations with customers, with winemakers, what you sensing out there.
One thing is, I think it's a constant shakeout that's going on, and I think it is becoming a little bit more like Bordeaux. You know, we say the new world, you get to experiment on all these things. You do get to experiment, you know, pay to play. But when it comes to selling the wine, it's very difficult for the small producer to get much traction out there, even when they're out there selling the wine themselves.
Totally.
And everything just eats into their margin, and it's never as profitable as they thought. But what I see is, you know, professionally run businesses of a certain size, like in Bordeaux, you know, that you start seeing these chateaus that can move 20, 30, 40,000 cases of expensive wine, you know, to really survive and support your family or, you know, your employees. There has to be some real success in selling
it's really hard.
Some volume of wine at high prices. And I think that the real identity crisis is on the end of these small producers that are really having a tough time reaching the buyers.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what people like you can do is connect them, but it's just not easy. And I think that recognizable names, you know, I think Acumen has a great name, Chapelae, a great name. My family, Titus, were distributed. We've been making wine for 30 years. We're distributed around the country. To start over and do that and reach a certain level of production, you know, if somebody asked me, should I do it? I'd say, you know, I might say yes, but I would be thinking no.
It's hard.
Because it's going to be a long road to get to that point where, but you can't say that to people.
No,
you got to say
they have a dream, you know.
Yeah, that's a dream. You don't want to take that away from them, but people do need to be careful about trying to start a wine business.
So you're making wine at Acumen, and you're the winemaker at Titus.
I am not strangely.
You're not.
I have to convince people that I was the
winemaker.
winemaker for 25 years for Titus. And then when we built the winery, I had just a little too much on my plate. And so I had to decide, do I want to be at Chapelae? Do I want to be at Titus? And, you know, in the end, I thought it was maybe a better idea that I stayed as more of a consultant to Titus and an owner and, you know, involved in the business, and maybe not be working all the time in a family business, you know, that with you know, brothers and parents and things like that. So I took the opportunity to really double down at Chapelae and keep my role at Titus, but we hired one of the guys that worked for me, Steve Cruson. He worked for me at Chapelae, and I just have the highest regard for him. And he's he's like part me, part my brother. So he's like, you know, he's a young guy, he's super smart, and he took over my job as the day-to-day winemaker. Not that we don't communicate and taste together all the time, but it was just a choice, and I'm so connected to the Chapelae.
So you're sort of pulled in a few directions here. Then
I seem to love it.
Like you drive around today, like 100 places.
Yeah, I really thrive on that, and I'm constantly in a position. You know, like when I was offered the job at Acumen, I contemplated maybe not telling my wife. You know, like she didn't need to hear that I was going to be doing something else that would have demands on my time. But that's the way I thrive. You know, I thrive on, you know, being at about 110%.
So when I think it was 2018, Winemaker of the Year. Is that correct?
Well, you tell me. I don't.
Somewhere is written in there.
Yeah, I've had many accolades that I don't pay a lot of attention to.
Do I have to go through scroll through this?
People tell me I'm the most humble winemaker in
that's
Napa
really
Valley.
funny.
And I just try to most of the reviews and things. I know we need the reviews.
I'm gonna have to fact check myself.
Yeah, I know. We all need to get great reviews and to make
how
our
important is that?
businesses
Because
healthy.
you know there's a sort of idea out there now that there's just rating whores, you know, and there's just ratings coming out all the time. But it does matter. The pull-through volume does matter.
You can make it without the reviews, and many people do. But, you know, with Chapellet, for Acumen, for Titus, we control our own vineyard. We all have we own our own land. We farm our own land. We have viticulturists that know what they're doing. We have now state-of-the-art, winemaking equipment. We didn't always.
Yeah.
I must say, Chapelae built a brand new winery, Titus a new winery, Acumen will build the winery. That once you have all those things lined up, you know how to grow grapes, you know how to make wine, you've developed a style that people like. The reviews and things like that, the accolades, they just kind of come along with the territory because you've set the stage. You've invested in what it takes to get those reviews and to make wines that will sell.
Because I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy because that was one of the questions was, do you think it's important for those accolades? You just answered that. But it says here, Winemaker of the Year, just announced, 2018 Winemaker of the Year, best known for crafting impeccable wines at Chapelae for nearly 3 decades.
I don't remember who said. I don't remember what organization. I kind of remember that vaguely. I remember that vaguely.
It's called Wine Spectrum, whatever that is.
Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. No. Oh, gosh. Now I'm really embarrassed because they were so wonderful about.
It's so funny.
Like literally, people just say like, "Why are you so humble?" And I'm just like, "It's the way I roll."
Well, you know what? That's an interesting point. And I got this epiphany when I was left talking to Bo Barrett. Now, Bo Barrett, we have this little family history because Jim, his father, and my father were friends. They tasted together Les Amis de Vin. Bo went to my high school. I surfed with his younger brother, even though he didn't like my surfing very much. But so we sort of have this neighborhood association. But when I left Chateau Montelena last week, it hit me that this lifestyle that you're living now, you can't buy the lifestyle. You can't come to Napa and buy the best vineyards. You could, you got all the money in the world, and build this fancy chateau and then believe that your lifestyle is centered on this, because you have to live this lifestyle. You have to earn this lifestyle. You have to believe in this lifestyle. And you have to make the mistakes along the way to be this humble guy who wins Winemaker of the Year.
I can tell you about the mistakes.
Yeah, so.
No, it is, that's the one thing I remember this very early on that when I think I was probably still studying at Davis, and, I heard this thing about that in Bordeaux. They'd say that, you really didn't know what you're doing until after 40 vintages.
Yeah, right.
And this was this thing, and I'm like, oh my God, that's going to take a long time. Well, I hit 40 vintages, and I must say I know a lot more now than I did back then when I first heard that.
So it's true then.
It's true.
It's true. It has to be.
The guys that part of my job, a big part of my job, is to mentor the guys, the young guys and girls, gals that I work with.
Yes.
That because they will take over, they will take all the reins from me at some point. And Cyril Chapelae, who's just, you need to interview him. He's the most wonderful guy. He put this to me probably 10 years ago about when you leave, I want to know that there will not be one hiccup in terms of quality. That the guys that I've been training, it's these two guys that I've worked with now for a long time. They could do my job now in many ways. And
that's interesting.
And Chapelae wants this continuity, and we've never done it, but we feel like we need to almost like write a book about the things that we've learned and how we've experienced them, and how will that take us. Chapelae just had its 50th anniversary. What's going to happen in the next 50 years? He wants it to be good, and so we all want it to be good. So I didn't have that. I really found my mentor. I'd been in the business for quite some time, and I must say it was more hit or miss. It was more seat of the pants, and I didn't have that real fine-tuned idea of how to make that great wine every year. And then I hooked up with, strangely, my very first week in the enology department at Davis, this fellow who's a PhD in chemistry and has started a business long ago now called Enologics, Leo McCloskey, and his wife is also a PhD in chemist, and they started the company together. when I went back and I was in the enology department at Davis, and I was very intimidated. I just thought everybody knew more than me and everything. And I listened to this guy and I thought, oh my God, he is amazing. He knows so much. He was talking about the future of wine.
Wow.
And where wine quality will go and why it will increase. And I was just stunned by this guy. And I thought, I was so humbled by him. Later, when he started this laboratory and consulting company in Sonoma, I went and knocked on his door, and because I really remembered him, and I went in, and he and I have collaborated now for over 25 years,
Wow.
or just about 25 years, and that's really
great relationship.
important to have. When it used to be, you could make mistakes and you could get away with it.
Yeah.
Grapes weren't so expensive, wine wasn't so expensive, barrels weren't so expensive. Now the stakes are very high in Napa Valley, and I'm so glad that I reached out to somebody that really, not only did he know how to make wine, but he understood he understood wine on a chemical level better than anybody I'd ever run into, and that he just opened up my eyes as to how good wine could be and why.
So no pressure. Like when the Chapellet comes and says, "I don't want any hiccups."
Yeah, and believe me, when I'm gone and Rye Richards takes my place, there won't be any hiccups. Plus,
It's interesting that, and I think for the listeners, that it can happen. There can be a hiccup. I mean, if your guidance isn't placed properly, if you don't choose the right person, he hasn't cut his or her teeth under your tutelage to understand the style that you're doing, you could have a hiccup, and a couple of hiccups, and
couple of one maybe is not good, but two is really
you're in
not
bad
good.
shape. But because I'm on the other side of this, and I taste all the stuff that's out there trying to be sold. And you wouldn't be surprised because you've been around long enough to know, there's some pretty bad mistakes that are in the bottle, and they got to move them. They're for the consumer, if they picked it and crushed it and fermented it, they're not going to dump it. It goes in the bottle and finds a home, or it gets blended somewhere else. But I taste that all the time. I mean, it's pretty bad sometimes.
Yeah, I think people they make a mistake and they don't own up to it, and they'll go ahead and bottle it, and then sure enough, it's selling for a quarter of the price that it should, and then people taste it and they say, well, this isn't very good. They're not going to go back and buy that wine.
It's funny you said that, because this is, and I think this is the crossroads for the consumer. Particularly with the internet, and I have to be honest, COVID has been great for the business that we're in. People are buying more, they're buying it online, they're learning how to do it. It's this crazy spike. We don't think it's going to go away. But the messaging, are you on Facebook at all?
Very little.
Okay, so
I've really got to get on with it.
No, you don't want to do it, but I just did. I do it because of business, and so
Yeah.
I get all these messages, and the consumer's barrage. And this is kind of the reason this podcast exists, is to tell these stories so people understand what they're drinking and what it takes to procure and find the wine that has the story and the value in the bottle, because it's not there everywhere. It's, in fact, 85% of the stuff I taste is either way overpriced for what it is, or it's actually unpalatable. And it is, there's a million reasons why that happens, but we need to tell the story almost one bottle at a time. And it takes years and years for the Titus brand, for the Chapellet brand, for the Acumen brand to develop itself by somebody opening and saying, this is pretty good.
Yeah.
And I feel something when I taste this, and I want to feel that again. And I want to share it with my friends and have them feel what I felt. Because it is passion in a bottle. It does express itself in what you're trying to do. So what is the future for Phillip Titus and the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years?
Man, I
don't know.
I'm just going to be doing I'm kind of, my life is so full with the amount of things I've taken on, and I've got an amazing wife who's an artist, and our kids are grown, so I'm just going to keep making wine, and I know some of my friends are even, I don't like the word retirement, and I always feel like I've got unfinished business. I didn't work this hard to get here than to retire.
I agree.
I want to
that.
keep pushing, and I want to take on more interesting projects. Just to be able, you don't want to take on too much, so that you can't really manage it and do a good job. But I don't mind getting up at 4:30 in the morning to get to work. I do it all the time, and it's a long day. But I have other hobbies, but wine is the thing. It just drives me on.
That's great.
And I've been so fortunate to have my family here, and to my second family, the Chapelae family, to have so much faith in me, because you got to start somewhere. And Don Chapelae, this is long before his kids were in the business. Don Chapelae, we'd talk, we'd sit, and we were in the same office, my desk and his desk. He had this faith that I could do it, and he let me make a few mistakes, and he never even mentioned it, it's that kind of an opportunity is harder and harder to come by.
Oh, for sure.
In a more corporate winemaking.
Well, that's another problem, right? Corporate America sort of stepped in on a lot of these places. And
yeah.
I'm afraid with the COVID and some of these small wineries, they're going to struggle because they just didn't have a robust digital presence, that we're going to see more, treasury wine estates and vintage wine estates buying up stuff, and that's going to be sad.
There's what you really see now is that not the COVID, like you say, has been good for big parts of the wine business, but it hasn't been good universally, because the people that weren't, didn't have their their sales plan in order and couldn't pivot fast enough.
Right.
Chapelae's done a wonderful job, and Titus has done a great job. That they were able to see what was happening and make the changes, and they're doing quite well. And I know that Diana is doing wonderfully here at Acumen, but it's not happening for everybody.
No, you're right. We're coming on an hour, so I don't want to take more of your time, but I do want to ask you one question, because people are asking about the fires all the time, and we were here 3 or 4 weeks ago when that lightning struck above on the east side, and we were watching it from the Yountville.
Were you
hotel.
here?
Yeah.
At the time? Oh
yeah.
my God.
So
yeah.
we were forced out of Forestville. I had a crazy interview with Mike Houlihan, who started Barefoot Cellars, now the largest brand in America. And it's a great story that you have to hear. Just funny, because he called on me in 1989, and I thought, who is this guy? The Chateau Lafite, F-E-E-T, of California. What a stupid idea, I'm saying to myself, and he ends up being the biggest brand in America. But we were there Tuesday in Forestville, and Thursday they evacuated. So that was the first round of fires. Now it looks like the 2020 vintage is just basically gone in most of Napa, at least the northern part in Calistoga and the eastern side.
Yeah. There's a few little pockets that did better than others, but yeah, it's
How about
pretty
your
tough.
guys' stuff? Anything affected?
The first fire, which they call the LNU fire, that from that lightning complex, that started, I think it was the 17th of
it was like
August. And that affected Chapelae because it started not too far from Chapelae, burned away from Chapelae, circled back around and came behind us.
Wow.
And that's where the family being there for so long really knew the lay of the land and directed we had 8 bulldozers working, cutting fire lines, and it saved the winery.
Wow.
And so the challenges started there. Then it's only been 2 weeks, two weeks ago tomorrow, that the glass fire started, and that started just north of my mother's house and the Titus Winery in St. Helena by Duckhorn. And so that Sunday night, we thought there was like around 5 o'clock, we thought we were out of the woods. We thought they had it kind of contained, and by 7 o'clock it was just raging. And so my brother and I, I was at my mother's house watching, kind of spotting the fires for my brother, and basically he just called me and said, "You got to get over here now. We have, we have embers everywhere. We're getting fires started. And so we spent the rest of the night putting out fires around the winery and our old farmhouse and barn. And but luckily we had the hoses, we had the system in place.
That's scary.
So it really affected. So we saved everything, and it was it's a real bonding moment with my brother. I mean, if we weren't bonded enough, we were definitely bonded after that night. It's tough. This is not going to be a year that you can't sugarcoat something like this. It's going to be pretty rough.
I keep getting emails from the winemaking, whoever. I'm on every damn email list there is in the wine business. It seems like, but they're selling smoke-tainted grapes for grappa and distillates. Which is kind of interesting. Is like, look, Scotch is smoked. Mezcal is smoked.
So is paprika, and so is a lot. So is a lot of things.
I'm kind of excited to taste some of this.
But there won't be the high-end wines from Napa this year. But there's actually a lot of technology that is there that can remove smoke, and a lot of it's come out of Australia. I mean, it's reverse osmosis and flash détente. There's a number of things that will remove smoke, and it. The wine may never be that, you're not going to charge $200. Those same grapes, that would have gone into that $200 bottle of wine, they may make a perfectly good $50 bottle of wine with this, these ways that you can remove smoke. It's actually very sophisticated. It's expensive. And I think some people are early adapters. After 2020, every winemaker in Napa Valley is going to know a lot about smoke.
Figure that out eventually.
They will learn, but they won't. Those won't go into expensive wines. They'll be probably very delicious, and there'll probably be some pretty good, value for consumers.
I want to taste some of this grappa or whatever. Maybe it's not grappa. Maybe it's just a brandy. But I'm dying to.
I don't know.
Maybe like a nuance.
I don't know if the guaiacol in the distillation. I think some of that probably does carry over into it. I mean, I love Scotch. I mean, I love bourbon. I love just what is a barrel? You buy a barrel. You spend $1,000 on this thing. They age it for 3 years. They put it together and they build a fire and they toast the inside of the barrel for an hour. And if that's not burnt wood, that's
pretty interesting.
That it's the same compounds.
That's pretty interesting. Yeah.
It's the same compounds. It's burning wood. The problem is when you have burning cars and burning houses. That's different.
Rubber soot on your wood.
Yeah, they're guaiacol compounds, cresol compounds, serengal. They're all these. It's very and they're very difficult to measure. It's not easy to measure these things.
Well, we drove by. We went to Silverado Trail. We went to Calistoga. We stopped and looked at a couple of sites. I mean, these melted cars and things. But listen, this has been an hour.
There's always a few melted cars.
Yeah. It's been an hour. I don't want to take up your time. It's been a fabulous conversation.
Great talking to you. A lot of history. I think we probably paralleled each other in many parts of the.
I graduated in college in '81. Well, I should have graduated in '80.
I finished Davis in '81.
So right around the same time.
Yeah.
I was not. At that point, I had worked at my dad's store. My dad had gained a reputation at that point in the '80s. He's 70. I have this wonderful newsletter from 1976 when the Judgment of Paris was finished, and Jim Barrett had walked into his store and held the Time magazine article up and said, "Not bad for a couple of guys from the Sticks," his famous moniker. And Bo says, "I think we celebrated with a bottle of Montrachet that night, and I think he bought it from your dad." So I thought, okay, that's pretty cool. But this industry is about passion, and it is about lifestyle and I've been trying to peel it back. I've been trying to get the stories down. Listening to Joanne Dupuis yesterday was such a fascinating conversation. I'll send you the link because you'll have to hear her who she knows and what she did.
That would be.
What she says? She says, I was the first woman ever to address the Napa Valley Vintners Association. Okay, now you can imagine the Napa Valley Vintners Association in 1969 or whatever it was that she did it was probably the Good Old Boys Network, right?
Oh yeah.
And so she gets done with the speech and she's talking about how she's going to do these international tours of wine, and she says, and Brother Timothy came up to me. I'm like, you knew Brother Timothy? One of the Christian brothers? And she goes, oh yeah. And he tells me we need to bring quality tasters to Napa Valley. Forget these bus tours. We want real tourist traffic to taste our wines. I'm like, what is history in a bottle?
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing.
Well, did you see it was Andre, the movie about Andre Chelichev. I can't remember the exact title.
Not seen
it's
the
a
movie.
funny. It's a funny title, but it is. I'd say as a historical movie. It's that he's born in Russia. He's a white Russian and leaves after the revolution and travels around Europe and studies and starts chicken farming and just trying his hand at all this different. He studied agriculture and he wrote books on agriculture and tried to grow things and ends up at the University of Bordeaux studying wine.
And then it said
when
something.
George Latour goes there looking for a winemaker and brought him in. But those guys,
Those stories are.
they have
off
been
the
around
charts.
until very recently, but they can't be forgotten. So I think it's great that you're doing that.
It's and the funny thing for me, it just hit me. For one, businesses, I have no idea what it's going to do for my business. People are listening. I've got 20,000 something downloads of different episodes, and people are listening to it. And I go to dinner with my friends. And they go, all of a sudden they'll quote something that I said or something that you might say. I'm like, you listen to the podcast? They're like, yeah. And so this medium is important. People are driving. Well, maybe not as much now with COVID, but they have time. It's like radio on the fly, right? It kind of befuddles me why video on the fly came first, right? YouTube and watching on your phones when podcasting is behind the curve on media that way, but now it's getting very popular. When radio seemed like the natural thing to want to just take.
Well,
with
to
you.
be able to listen to it as you drive, because we're all in our cars too much.
Yeah,
probably,
right.
Most of us. Podcasts. I mean, that it is really.
It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And who knows what's going to be next? That's the thing. So my wife, who's coming now, we're laying out the new location that we just moved, and I'm building the studio. And she's like, "What are you doing?" I'm painting the thing with a green screen. I go, "Well, this is where we're going to be going. We're going to be doing all kinds of media." She's like, "Really?" And then I built this engineer's booth. She's like, "What are you doing there?" I said, "Well, you got to have an engineer's booth. You have a studio." So all of a sudden, I've got all this great equipment and lighting and stuff.
And it's very accessible. Cyril Chapelae and I do. Gosh, we do at least one webinar and sometimes two a week.
So to clients, like your club people, or
Yeah, just to anybody that's kind of either in our club or our mailing list, and just anybody that wants to join. And Cyril's such a social guy; it's a great outlet for him. But it gets our message out, and we've come up. You think, are we going to run out of themes? But we just keep coming up
That's
with
great.
interesting
That's the way to do
things
it.
for people to talk about, and.
That's the way to do it.
And probably the great thing to do would be to team up with other people, because then you kind of broaden your reach a little
For
bit
sure.
and talk about some of these historical things. Because I think the history of wine
We'd
in
love to do
Napa
that.
Valley and Bordeaux, I mean, the history of some things is just more interesting
It
than
is.
the
It's a
history
very
of
interesting
others.
thing, and people want to know. It's almost embarrassing, and it probably happens to you all the time. However, you're in the business and you're in the industry all the time here. But if I go to a dinner party and I don't know anybody, and the conversation always comes around to wine,
Yeah.
and I'm always the guy talking about it, and they're asking me questions, and I get embarrassed because all the rest of the conversations they're finished. That no one wants to talk about anything else because they want to learn about wine, or they want to tell me what they know about wine.
Yeah.
Which is
where they've been,
Yes.
and, what
And
they drink, and
it's a fascinating subject, and it goes back to this idea: why is it the grape, that creates so much emotion? It's not a pineapple. Like you can go to Maui and get a Maui Blanc, or I was at pineapple stuff,
Yeah.
and you don't get the same feelings. It doesn't make you feel something, but wine makes you feel something. That night, and this is a really good point. I'll wrap it up with this. You cannot take that sign that you see in many places, probably around Napa downtown here, you probably see it 100 times, life's too short to drink bad wine. You can't take that too lightly because it's such an important part of lifestyle. That why suffer through something because A, it was too cheap to buy, or it just wasn't exactly what you're looking for. When my wife says, and she shakes her head at me, I'm like,
I'll open something else.
yeah, I open it up and else.
You know exactly that look. It's like, okay, you don't have to say, well, why don't you just try it? It's like,
and damn it, you need to learn to like Syrah because she won't drink Syrah. I can't get her to
my
do
wife
it.
won't drink Syrah either.
I don't
What
get it.
is that? And
I don't know.
Maybe it's a guy thing.
I don't know.
Maybe it's, Syrah has natural guaiacol in it. It's full of guaiacol.
Is it? Okay, so that's
yeah.
a difference in the chemistry of it?
The chemistry, it naturally has guaiacol. And so maybe, it's that smoky,
Maybe.
kind of earthy thing.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know. But, well, here's a toast.
Cheers.
Here's the Acumen Mountainside Sauvignon
This is
Blanc.
beautiful. This is the wine we feature in the club coming up.
Perfect time of day to have
And
a
it's,
sip of
I love,
Sauvignon Blanc.
when I first tasted it, the body of the wine is in the nose. You sense this wonderful weight.
It's really a nice, rich wine.
It is. It's very rich, and the weight is great. Cheers, Philip. Great having you on the show.
Cheers.